The more capable you are, the more you're aware of what you don't know.
They were CEOs of companies. They were entrepreneurs, some business owners. There were many times when I thought to myself, like, what am I doing here?
The mask doesn't protect your reputation. It isolates you from the very people who could help you. I was sitting alone, going over my notes for the 100th time. I'd given this talk before, but I knew the material cold, and yet there it was, the voice in the back of my head. You can't connect with the audience. What you have to say doesn't matter. You shudder and stammer way too much. The more I tried to memorize my lines, the worse it got. Frustration turned to doubt, and the doubt turned into something that I didn't want to say out loud. I'm not sure I'm cut out for this. That's when I realized it. Imposter syndrome had crept in, and it had brought all of its friends. If you've ever stood outside a room, a boardroom, a stage, maybe even a big meeting, and thought, I have no business being here, this one's for you. I spent 30 years in corporate leadership making every mistake in the book, some of them twice. I'm Preston, and if you're a leader who's ever felt in over your head but too proud to say it, you're in the right place. This is PQ. Welcome. The last episode, the confusion of the new role. You figured out the job had changed, and you hadn't. But here's the thing. Once you start figuring it out, a new fear shows up. What if you're not actually good enough to do it? What if they find out? That's today's tension, and nobody talks about it out loud. Episode 3, Image versus Honesty. Imposter syndrome isn't weakness. It's one of the most common experiences in leadership. An estimated 70% of people experience it at some point. Among high achievers, the number is even higher. The more capable you are, the more you're aware of what you don't know. Now, that's not a flaw, that's self-awareness. But here's where it goes sideways. The problem isn't the feeling. The problem is the mask. The energy spent performing confidence that you don't have. Hiding struggle that's perfectly normal. Projecting an image that's slowly draining you. The mask doesn't protect your reputation. It isolates you from the very people who could help you. And it teaches your team that struggle is something to hide, not something to grow through. 70% of leaders have felt this. And I promise you, I was not in the other 30%. Looking back, I exercised some poor judgment. And now from the home office in Atlanta, Georgia, the top 5 things going through every leader's head right before a big presentation. Number 5, my stomach just made a sound that I've never heard before. That's new. Number 4, blank, completely blank. I've been alive for 57 years and I can't remember a single word of the English language. Number 3, I need to pee. I just peed. I need to pee again. This must be a medical condition. Number 2, I've given this talk 12 times. My brain has chosen right now to forget all 12 of them. And the number one thing going through every leader's head the night before the big presentation, God, if you'll just get me through the next 30 minutes, I'll become a missionary. Your call on where. Funny now, but it wasn't funny then. You heard the cold open, sitting alone, notes everywhere, voice getting louder. But let me take you back to what actually happened that night. Alone in the room, notes spread out all in front of me. I was going over it again and again. The more I rehearsed, the worse it got. Every run-through made me less confident, not more. And that's when the voice showed up. You've lost it. There's no way you'll effectively communicate your ideas. You'll never connect with the audience. I knew the material. Trust me, I did. But that didn't matter. The critic doesn't care what you know. It cares what you fear. And here's what nobody sees. The polished leader who walks into the room and the terrified person sitting alone with their notes the night before. That gap, that's where the imposter syndrome lives. Not on the stage, in the green room. Then something shifted inside of me. And I wasn't trying to hear it, but God whispered while I was sleeping. Take ownership. Don't memorize lines. Speak from the heart. Know what you want to say and how you want to say it. Be genuine. And if you do that, you'll connect. Well, that next day I walked in and I let go of the performance. Stopped trying to be the version of me that I thought that they needed, and just showed up as the version that was actually there. And I got my mojo back. The mask wasn't protecting me. It was costing me. The moment I stopped pretending and started being present, that is when I actually connected. Most leaders I know go to church on Sunday and show up on Monday like they've never heard a word of it. I was one of them. The Discipled Leader Apprenticeship exists to close that gap. One-on-one discipleship that shapes how you actually lead, not just what you believe. If you're tired of living two separate lives, visit PrestonPoor.com. Hey, all right. We've got Steve Adams. Steve Adams is in the house. Welcome, Steve. Appreciate you being on P Cubed.
Oh, man, good to be here, Press. As always, I mean, we've done this a few times in other arrangements, so good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you from one podcaster to another, my studio to your studio across America. Here we go.
Nice.
But I'd really love for my audience to get to know you a little bit. I know you personally a whole bunch, but I know that they would love to hear and understand about you, your background, and then this wonderful ministry that you've started called Embracing Brokenness Ministries. Can you tap into that a little bit? Tell us about yourself and how that ministry is going.
I can do that. So first of all, you can see I have a little bit of gray hair. So if I took you way back, we'd be here for about an hour. So I'll just touch on some of the stuff way back there. But a good bit of my career, Preston, was be as an entrepreneur. So I did spend some time in corporate America, but found that wasn't my gig as much. And I seemed to be a little bit of a risk taker. So anytime chances came to do something a little new and different, I did it. So as an entrepreneur, there are probably a half a dozen businesses or more. I lost count that I was either on my own or partnered in. And there were a variety of different things. So I think from my perspective, just having not spent a lot of time in corporate America, I just tended to be a guy that liked to tinker and to grow things right from the beginning. So
love it. It's great.
A little later on, though, after, oh my gosh, probably 35 years in different business arrangements like that, I started doing some executive coaching, probably I could call it some consulting as well, because sometimes you go in and tell what people what you want them to do, but a lot of times
you tell them what to do. That's the consulting. That's the bottom line in consulting.
I love
do
that.
This.
Yeah, do it.
And then leave.
And pay me. So it's like, and whether you do it, it's your problem or not. When I'm coaching them, it takes a little more patience, a little more getting them to the place where they understand, that change is necessary to grow. So that's been part of it. But really, since then, about 8 years ago, my wife and I did start which you just referred to, called Embracing Brokenness Ministries. And that's a ministry that has largely been dealing with folks who, understand that beneath many of their struggles in life, that there's deeper issues. And a lot of them have to do with identity. And so we spend time teaching and mentoring and serving. We have found ourselves in churches, in the community, online, offline, just bringing a message of hope to people that really are struggling, but it's for everyone. And I think that's an important part of what we do as a ministry, but it's good to see how other people have responded, because we're just message carriers in the end. And so I think for us, that's pretty much what we look for and any opportunity we can is just to deliver the message, the gospel message, salvation of Jesus Christ.
So good. Thank you for all the work certainly you're doing. We've known each other for years. It's kind of fun that Steve and I met virtually sometime around, it was after COVID, I think.
It was, it was. It was
Yeah, right.
in there somewhere. Yeah, we sure did.
Yeah, somewhere in there. And then you and I actually got to see each other in central Pennsylvania when I came up there to do a keynote speech. And you and I had a chance, I think it was lunch we had together or breakfast. I can't remember which meal it was, but always fun to make a connection. It's one of those you have virtual and then you actually meet in person. A wonderful thing. It was just a great time, sweet time on that. But why? Because I know you have such a great background. I knew that you'd be a great guest to talk maybe about imposter syndrome. It's not because I know that you've gone through any specific things that you've shared with me, but I can only imagine being the corporate person that you were for a short time, your entrepreneurial piece that you did, and now you're in a ministry.
Yes.
Right. And so there are many different things that you've done. It's this idea, imposter syndrome really is this, that people don't really realize about it. It's not about being unqualified. It's the persistent belief that you don't belong, that you got lucky, and it's only a matter of time before everybody figures it out.
Yes.
So if you're like me, I've been in all kinds of situations and I had this stuff in the back of my head. And I find one statistic extremely interesting, and I've coached people on this too, that are actually CEOs that struggle with this. They admit it, is that 70% of CEOs struggle with imposter syndrome. And so what that says to me is for our audience that is young millennials that are just being promoted or learning how to lead in the workplace right now, if a CEO has imposter syndrome, goodness gracious, you should be okay understanding if you have it as well, because they're sitting up there at the top of the organization. They've worked their way up the ladder. They've done all these things. They're accomplished, but they still struggle with this in the back of their mind. And so I thought maybe you and I could just chat about that for a little bit and tell me your thoughts and your experiences. So let's jump into the first question here. Was there a time that you walked into a room and told yourself that you didn't belong there, Steve? Is there a time when you walked into a room and told yourself that you didn't belong there?
Well, more than one time. But it's funny when you brought that up and you talked about possibly some young entrepreneurs or young business CEOs, young people in business in the community right now. And I remember when I was 22 years old, so I'll use this and then we'll jump into another example, but it was real imposter syndrome when I was standing in boardrooms of major oil companies, introducing them to the newest technology and electronics that was available in retail self-serve gas. So you can imagine, so I won't date myself too much. That would have been a long, long time ago. And I'm standing there presenting to top-tier executives. I mean, I flew into Getty, into Mobil, into Exxon, and I'm 22 or 23 years old. Okay, so when you brought that up, I thought, you know what? In that case, I think I was a little bit of an imposter, but I knew more than they did. And that's really the key, I think, a lot of times where we tell ourselves stories and they aren't necessarily true. And that was, earlier on, you talk about, some of your experiences at Coke and other places where, like, what am I doing here? And I think that was one of them. But for young people, that may be true. But for me, later in my career, as I started to I started coaching or consulting, as we were talking about earlier, they were CEOs of companies. They were entrepreneurs, some business owners, leadership team members. And I would, run mastermind groups and I'd sit one-on-one with folks and coach them. And there were many times when I thought to myself, like, what am I doing here? Even though I'm 35, 40 years into a career with all the experience I could possibly need, I didn't feel like I could help anyone. And it was really hard because coming into those meetings, I'd be nervous a lot of times. I'd get up there and I'd start talking and, the dry mouth, everything that went with it. But I was really struggling to believe that I had brought anything of value. And so it happened a lot. And when I finally realized there was something different than what I believed to be true happening, it started to clear it up a little bit. But those are some of the things that I think about right now as you asked me that question that have really been tough. And I would show up as an imposter in many ways, but believing something that wasn't true.
Yeah, sure. So tell me a little bit about that self-talk that you might have had that was going on. What was that story that you kept running through your mind when you're sitting as you're a coach and you're dealing with those people and you're saying, I shouldn't be here? What were some of the things you kept repeating to yourself, whether you were in the room right there or later or before? Tell me about that inner life that was happening.
Well, I wondered, especially when you're coaching people at that level and you're doing any specific projects that they're bringing in you into. I believe that if someone asked me a question that I couldn't immediately solve, or if I admitted on any kind of uncertainty at all, people would conclude I wasn't qualified.
Mhm.
So that was what I would say to myself a lot of times, like, am I really qualified to do this? Meanwhile, for many of the people in the room, I had very successful businesses, and I had some that crashed considerably that were really that I wasn't proud of for the reasons that maybe they did crash, but for others, I'm like, well, I really have a lot to offer here, but I kept telling myself, I don't know what I'm going to do. If I can't answer a question, I'm going to sit here with egg on my face and look like I'm clueless. And that was a hard truth to face, and it wasn't true, actually.
So when do you remember a time, Steve, where this lack of confidence hit you the hardest and showed up and how it impacted the way that you engaged people, how you led them in those sessions? Do you remember
Yeah.
a time?
I think there's some high stake meetings that I chaired or I was involved in, and there were presentations or maybe specific consulting engagements, and a lot of times I'm called in to help people solve some of the toughest problems in their business structure. They can in their leadership teams. I would even
Mhm.
coach leaders in their teams, and when there were dysfunctional things going on, and I would walk in and go, "Well, yeah, I've been part of those. Can I really help solve it?" Because it really became more about me than about them, and that was
Mm.
what hit me the hardest, where I understand what's going on, but honestly, you know, I'm not sure I can do this. And I would tell myself that before I'd even walk in the room, even though I'm fully prepared, by the way. I mean, I never walk into anything like that without preparation, full blown preparation, just like you do for a podcast or I do for something like this in
Sure.
conversation. But that was the difficulty in it all. And these were some of them were high stakes meetings. Some of them were, you know, pretty significant engagements financially for the people on the other end of the line there, so to speak. And the interesting thing is that in 98% of the cases, I'd come through for them to help them in some way that made a
Sure.
difference.
Well, that's good, certainly. So, but I imagine at some point, that inner critic for you, you've been able to break the cycle somewhat. And so, could you have advice for the folks that are listening today about how to not pay attention to the inner critic,
Right.
and to break the cycle so you can get out of this imposter syndrome and get on with what you're doing instead of having that doubt and like, why am I here?
Yeah.
Who am I to be doing this kind of thing? What advice would you give them?
Well, first I'd say start paying attention to the evidence rather than the emotions behind what you're feeling. Because the evidence, as I alluded to, is that in almost every case, the outcome was exactly what anybody engaging me to come alongside of them, what they expected. So evidence rather than emotion, because,
Mm.
and I'd say to anybody out there, just put yourself in a situation where you're leading large teams and you're making decisions, you're presenting, you're trying to help people navigate a very complex set of problems and issues, and you are successful at that over and over again. That's evidence. You may feel something different, but that's not true. So the feelings told me I didn't belong, but the facts told a different story. I
Yeah.
think that's what we needed. And the second thing I think was realizing that my worth wasn't tied to my performance. And my faith became a huge part of that shift. I came to understand that really God wasn't asking me to be the smartest person in the room. He wasn't asking me to have all the answers. I think he was asking me to be faithful and with the experiences, the gifts and opportunities he had already given me. And that was a switch that had to go off. And once I stopped trying to kind of prove myself, started focusing on serving others, and the pressure began to lift. Do I still occasionally hear that voice? Sure. Not nearly as much, but I recognize it for what it is. And it's fear, not truth. And I think that's what I said earlier. You're dealing with an emotion that is not who God says you are. And I can't leave him out of the equation. You said I'm in a ministry, right? So I sit with people now in really tough settings. You walk into a prison and things are not they're what you expect when you see it on television a lot of times, because it's rough. It's a tough environment. And these are people really trying to find their way out of some very hard situations. And it's a little easier now that I've gone through a lot of this to go in with confidence, to know that I have something to offer because God's given me those gifts and I recognized it. So fear doesn't get to make my decisions anymore.
Yeah, that's good. I love that. You've kind of flipped the script on all that.
Yeah.
One of the self-serving comments I make because of the inner critic in me when I used to go into meetings, and I still say it. And the point is a couple things to loosen people up,
Yeah.
and maybe get them to laugh a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's the truth. I go into a room and I tell everybody, if I'm the smartest person in the room, we're all in trouble. And typically everybody laughs and go, well, that's good. But what that does, it puts me at ease. It lets them know that, hey,
Yeah.
I've got this talk going on the inside of me saying, hey, I don't know if I can help solve the problem or whatever. And it's not a shift of responsibility. It's just a positioning to get, number one, them to loosen up and say, hey, I'm not going to have all the answers and have fun with it. So
Yeah.
that helps.
Yeah.
And the other thing I found too, Steve, is that I've written a lot about this and read a lot of psychology about it, that 7 out of 10 thoughts that we have every day are negative.
Hmm.
And so it's the inner critic that we keep beating ourselves up. And so I talk a lot when I'm doing some keynotes or doing workshops, I talk about how do you move those 7 thoughts to maybe just 6 or to 5. And I'm not talking about the power of positive thinking. I'm just
No.
talking about the inner critic versus the inner champion that's inside, and who do you feed most, grows the most. And so those are some things that people can actually do. To your point with the fear and the way you thought about it, the process, our faith in that. Identity is a big piece of it as well.
Huge.
That we don't do. So good. Anything else that you want to add on this? Is there anything that popped into your mind as we talked through this? You say, man, I want to say one other thing on that.
Well, thanks for that question, because as I think about how I would define imposter syndrome now, when you first asked me about it, I thought, that really isn't a thing right now. Although when I started to think about it, I can see where it was a thing for many years in the past. And I have to encourage anybody in your audience to say that and you are uniquely gifted. And I said, and I'll say it again. And if you have the confidence to know that what has been invested in you from day one, really, whether it's your parents that helped to do that, mentors in your life, coaches, people like Preston, for example, who's written extensively about leadership and the difficulties and the challenges in it. I would say that you can step into any of these situations that you fear with confidence, to know that you have what it takes and that God's got your back. And I think for me and for you, Press, I think you've been such an encouragement in that and being transparent. What I would encourage anybody to do when you're struggling this way is authenticity, being willing to admit that, bring people around you that care about you, that are willing to speak into your life. You do that through your writing, through your constant encouragement, by bringing people on and talking about these sort of things. But it's hard to replace that, because the biggest enemy to anything like this is isolation. And so if we isolate ourselves, it's easier to become an imposter, because we begin to think it's all about us. And sometimes if you don't have an answer, folks, just tell people, I don't have an answer. Or if you're prepping for something and you're struggling with that, just admit it and ask for help. I think, to me now, community has been the greatest way that I can get past this imposter syndrome, or even thinking that it's all about me anymore. It's really about the people that you're serving. And if you see that and you understand that, you'll have the answers that are needed.
Well, that's awesome. Steve, I thank you for your ministry. I thank you for your friendship. I thank you for your insights. How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, if you'd like, it's easy. EmbracingBrokenness.org is the website to our ministry. We just launched a new website, actually. But if anybody wants to listen in on podcasts that we do every other week, that's Embracing Brokenness Podcast, every single platform you can imagine. Just do a search. It's on YouTube. It's everywhere, Spotify. Where, like you are, Press. Haven't won any awards, though, like you did. but we're going to keep trucking. We're going to keep moving. But hey, man, it's great to be with you. And I really appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts.
Thank you. And before I let you go, I know you're releasing a new book, your bride. And so I want you to put a plug in about that as well. And then also I'd love for you to share maybe one of the key endorsements you've gotten, because that's a well-known name that people will, is a credibility marker for you and what you're doing. Certainly.
Very kind of you. Thank you. We are entitling it Embracing the Way, with the subtitle of saying, Discovering the Life You Were Made For in Union with Christ. And it's a compilation, really. It took us about 8 years to do this. And look, we never had this idea of being, authors or writing a book, but the vision was clear. What he gave us to do as a ministry, we wanted to try to capture that in a way that people could engage in it. So there'll be, a study guide that follows it up. If you go to embracingtheway.com, you can learn a little bit more about that. Yeah, in a couple of months, it'll be on the shelves. The study guide will be shortly thereafter. We have video series. People can do the work individually or in groups. And then if you really want to follow where we're headed, we are going to add a discipleship piece. And I don't want to call it completely digital discipleship because we have to be involved, but we are calling it Embracing the Way Circle, and it'll be a way for you to continue on your faith journey, to go deeper into the message and really what God has for each one of you. And yeah, it was kind of cool because one of my mentors that I met back in 2012, who, we are very aligned from a ministry perspective, is John Eldridge from Wild at Heart. And we just come back from a conference there, actually, in Colorado Springs. And he was very kind to read it thoroughly and to endorse the book. And thanks for the chance to share that. But we also have others, like a guy by the name of Preston Poor, who actually endorsed it too. So, hey, come on.
John Eldridge, Preston Poor.
Preston Poor. Probably
John Eldridge, Preston Poor.
Amen, brother.
I got it. No, but thank you. I'm honored to do that. Thank you for being on here. Thanks for telling us about your ministry. Best wishes for the launch. I know launching a book is a big deal. It's fun. I know you've put a lot of heart and soul in writing that.
We did.
And so I want to thank you for that and everything you're doing. And I appreciate you being on PQ today.
Awesome. Press, thanks for having me.
Steve, thank you. And what you just described, letting someone actually see you, that's not weakness. That's the bravest thing that a leader can do. And the oldest leader in Scripture who had to learn that, well, it was Gideon. Judges 6, hiding in a winepress, threshing wheat in secret, out of fear. The angel of the Lord appears and says, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Well, Gideon's response, "But Lord, how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." Gideon, he felt like a fraud. The gap between who God saw and who Gideon thought he was, that couldn't have been wider. God didn't argue with his self-assessment. He didn't say, "You're more capable than you think." He said, "I'll be with you." That's the answer to the imposter syndrome that no amount of confidence building can match. Not "you're enough," but "I'll go with you." The mask tells you to hide until you're ready. God calls you out of the winepress as you are. Here are 3 things that I wish someone would have told me. 3 things that would have saved me from a lot of sleepless nights before a lot of big rooms. Number 1, the inner critic is a liar. And it sounds exactly like your own voice. Naming it is the first step to not obeying it. The voice that says you're not enough is not telling you the truth. It's telling you your fear. Number 2, the mask costs more than the struggle. You think hiding your doubt protects your credibility. It doesn't. It means you're carrying it alone. Vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the thing that makes people trust you. And number 3, God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. Gideon, he was hiding in a winepress. Moses had a stutter. David was the youngest. So if you're waiting to feel ready, you'll wait forever. Step out of that winepress. Imposter syndrome doesn't mean you're a fraud. It just means that you care enough to know the stakes. The leader who never feels it, well, those are the ones that I'm worried about. So you survived the shock. You figured out the job. You started dropping the mask. But the hardest tension in this arc is still ahead, because it's not about what happened to you. It's about who you've been. Next episode, what got me here now is working against me. See you there. Well, that's a wrap. Thanks for spending part of your day with me, and I know your time is valuable and your to-do list is long. If this was helpful, share it with someone else who needs it. Like it, comment, leave a review. It helps more people find the show, and Quite honestly, it makes me feel like I'm not just talking to myself in here. And if today's tension hit home, maybe a little too close to home, and if you're tired of being one person on Sunday and someone else on Monday, check out the Disciple Leader Apprenticeship at PrestonPoor.com. 10 weeks, 1 hour a week, one conversation at a time. No slides, no lectures, just real talk. And find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram. Peace out, be a rock star.